Okay, guys, here's the third one. Let me pick up on what I was telling you. And again, I wear a Gamecock shirt, but I'm the kind of guy who's usually in basketball shorts, so forgive me. All right. So let me show you a book I'd really like you to read at some point, even though I know that you probably have so much to read right now you don't know what to do. This book is being used by Dr. Patricia Sullivan at USC, who was one of my professors at Harvard the summer that I was there on an NEH scholarship for studying the civil rights movement. And it was an institute, and she was a professor at the Barker Center at that time, and is now a USC professor here, in Columbia. It has been for several years, and she uses some of the books that she had assigned to us back in the year 2001. This is Trouble in Mind by Leon Litwack. Notice how thick it is. All right, Black Southerners in the Age of Jim Crow, and it is all about. It's like reading a Holocaust book on the way the Germans treated the Jews. That's the kind of book it is. You cry through this book. And it's dispassionate history. It's 510 pages of horror. All right, and it's probably one of the most important books I've ever read in my life. And the historian in question is Leon Litwack. He came to speak to us. I recommend him. Leon F. Litwack, 1998, I believe, is when it was published, and it's Trouble in Mind. And it provides historical background that I think that if anybody reads this, seriously, they won't ever say to somebody else, "Get over it." All right? Why do you keep on bringing up race? Why do we have to talk about this? We're Americans and we don't need to talk about it. Actually, when somebody tries to silence you that way, what they're really doing is saying, we don't want to hear it. All right? This is the way it's supposed to be, the way I am and the way I think. I don't want you to have an opinion. I don't want you to analyze these things in ways that make me uncomfortable. That's what that person is saying to you. History is the antidote to that kind of thinking, all right? Because we need historical memory. We need to have kids be grounded in what actually happened, rather than a series of mythical grievances with Gone with the Wind overtones. So there's history, and then there's mythological history. And too often, particularly in the South, the history of this part of the country is mythologized. It is mythologized and romanticized, and as a result, you've got people able to stand up seriously, and look you straight in the face and say, "Oh, the Confederate flag, that's heritage. That's not hate." Really? Okay, you got the right to that opinion. As an historian, I might want to put before you some other information that might actually change that view. All right, so you can have whatever opinion about the flag that you want. I always tell kids this. I don't tell them what they should be thinking. But when we dealt with the Confederate flag controversy up in Whitmire, where I did some of my research, we let the kids talk it out and think about it and research it and come up with certain conclusions. And a lot of the kids were really wrestling with these issues because they were friends with one another and they liked one another. They also wanted to hold on to their symbols, and they wanted their symbols to mean certain things and not mean others. That's kind of difficult. It really is, because symbols are fraught items full of all kinds of, like suitcases, full of all kinds of stuff, and not everything in each suitcase when you unpack it is particularly palatable. So they reached a little settlement, a little compromise, you might say, and because I said the kids liked one another. It's one thing about young people, they tend to like one another, and the differences don't bother them as much as it does a lot of older folk. They were willing to accommodate with one another, and that's the basis of dialoguing across differences. So a person can hold to their view of Southern history if they want, because it's a free country, but it's our job to put in front of people the factual information, so that way they can come to an intelligent conclusion. If they derive the conclusions that we might not feel necessarily follow from the facts, at least they have been made aware of them, and they can say that they know what's going on. All right? Because again, there is such a thing as telling people, "Look, here's the way it is," and saying you're entitled to your opinions, but not entitled to your own facts. I stop right there. You're not entitled to your own facts, but you are entitled to your own opinions. And if your opinions don't necessarily connect with the facts, well, this is America. You have the right to believe whatever you want to believe. We have the right, through free speech, to be able to say, "No, I respectfully disagree." And I think that's important, is being able to teach kids to dialogue across their differences. And I will post again the article by Borgulis and Rice, which I found so seminal, to move away from debate and instead to discussion, where we try to understand one of those points of view and then reach accommodation, rather than debating somebody into defeat. When you do that, you make people defensive to the point where they just don't want to give in even when they know they're wrong. I mean, who wants to admit publicly, hey, I'm wrong, my ideas are stupid? No, nobody wants to say that. All right? Nobody wants to say that at all. I have a whole bunch of civil rights books back here. The books on this shelf here were from that course I took at Harvard in teaching the civil rights movement. And then a lot of the other books up here, these books here are a lot of the education texts that I used. I've already pulled one out for you from my doctoral program. And then a lot of the other stuff is in different languages over here, Latin, French, and Spanish. But there's a lot of history. So, I did teach U.S. history briefly. I know you can only see my torso. So let me sit back down. I did teach U.S. history off and on. I am certified in social studies as well as foreign language. And I taught American studies at Ridgeview, and I also taught U.S. history 1 year with that ridiculous end-of-course test at the time. Pardon my opinion of the end-of-course program. You can have whatever opinion you want of it. I'm not particularly fond of multiple-choice tests where kids don't get to know teachers don't get to know what the questions are, so we can't prepare the kids and we can't point them out to what they need to know. I like to be able to do that. I like to be able to know what the multiple-choice questions are as a teacher, so that way I can gear instruction to what it is I'm asking them to do. They're teenagers. Now, you can do that to adults. Don't do it to kids. I just don't like that way of testing. Now, there I'm giving you an opinion, and you might disagree. You might think the end-of-course testing program is the best thing since sliced bread. Try to convince me. It might be still my heart when it comes to those tests. Oh, Lord, have mercy on my soul, because I don't like end-of-course tests. And I really wish we did something else when it comes to testing. I am so glad that the state finally saw the light with regard to the exit exam and the HSAT program, and actually allows people to get their diplomas back through application. Those who were denied them for not passing that test in years past, because not everyone does well at multiple choice, which is why I use a variety of different measures. When I test you, I'm giving you a multiple choice test, but I'm making up the questions. So I know what I'm asking. I know what I'm asking, and I know what I'm teaching. That makes it fair from my perspective, all right? Because I can say, I taught this, all right? I taught this. It comes directly out of the book, out of these readings here. But with an end-of-course test, you're given general parameters. We'll cover this, don't cover that, and it's like, oh, okay, what could they possibly ask? And then it's a secure test, and it's just, I don't know, I just don't consider it to be optimal educationally, and I really wish that somebody would do a doctoral dissertation, for instance, on the EOC program as to whether or not it has been effective and how people perceive it, and whether or not it has done what it is supposed to have done. I think that would be interesting research. That might actually be beyond the scope of your program, because you are dealing with a specific action research problem in your classrooms. I'm already in the third one here, and I do want to address some of the diversity issues in here that I noted in your posts, because I do read them, and then I mark down on this paper the good observations I think that need to be shared with the class. I hope you've had a chance to look at them. And then I also mark your posts otherwise. I put good posts, and sometimes I write paragraphs. All right, so it depends. So what follows is a summary of key points you made in your posts this week, and that I am addressing now in the video. Baker, our soldier, all right, talks about the cycle of socialization on page 46. I would definitely look at that in the book if you haven't. Difficulties in coping. He expresses the personal difficulties he has in coping with differences in the idea of oppression from a conservative white male military perspective. But he's willing to grapple with these ideas, and that's why I say hats off to you, Mr. Baker, because you are being asked to think outside of traditional categories for what is traditional for you, and God bless you for serving our country. We need them. We need our soldiers. We need our military establishment to stand on guard for the Republic. And sometimes to make us really happy is what happened in France when military training kicked in. And of the 3 boys who took down the terrorist, 2 of them were servicemen. And their military training, and also their training in saving lives. And one guy had been shot, and the other guy knew exactly what to do to save his life. And until they got to the emergency care, and they were able to stop the train at the next stop. They deserved the award, the French Legion of Honor, and France is just gaga over the United States and those 3 boys, and who have aw shucks good looks to them as well. 3 American clean-cut boys who just Johnny on the spot saved the day. I mean, you just can't ask for something more. Apple pie and ice cream and wave the flag, and it made me feel just wonderful. And it also reinforced something that a lot of people don't realize, and that is that the French love the United States and always have and always will. France has always had a love-hate relationship with the United States, mostly love. And when I say hate, sometimes it has to do with the culture, where there are cultural disconnects, between fast food and the way the French cook, and other things where the French consider the United States to be going off half-cocked into certain areas, whereas France is a much older country, a little bit more, reticent to go where we tend to run. So, in spite of the differences, the United States and France remain very good allies and work very well in the war on terrorism. Some people don't realize that when Mali was threatening to be taken over completely by, an affiliate of Al Qaeda, they had taken over Timbuktu, the ancient city, which, by the way, in the north of Mali is the home to the world's oldest university. I always tell my kids when I was teaching school, I always ask them where was the first real university founded, what city and in what culture, and somewhere in Europe. No, Timbuktu, right? A major university that taught law and medicine and philosophy and all kinds of languages and all kinds of good things in the High Middle Ages from about the year 1100 onward, and opened its doors through equal opportunity to everyone, and males, that is, sorry, not females, but if you were a young man of talent, you could go there. And this was in Africa, and these people were black, right, and they were Muslim, and there's the way we understand university, the first modern understanding of a university, or the rudiments of what would eventually become a modern university. That city was taken over by them, along with about 2/3 of the country. They destroyed the democracy temporarily, and they were threatening to march on the capital, Bamako. And the French president said, enough, sent in the troops, and within a couple of weeks had completely cleared the country of the terrorists. So much for the idea that the French are weak-kneed. They're not. They're quite willing to use their military force when they need to protect the interests of the French community. There are 16 republics in Africa where people speak French. And a lot of people don't realize that. French is a majority black language now. 55% of all speakers of French in the world are black. Most of them live in Africa. All right, Baker, I really appreciate the fact that you're wrestling with ideas. That's what a good education is all about, and I know you're going to do fine. Boccino talks about structural injustice. And about a young lady in the reading who was facing imminent homelessness, and the wealthy buying power and privilege for their children, how kids don't start at the same place. The idea that everybody has the same equal opportunity, come on. If you come from a wealthy household where every advantage is being given to you, and as opposed to another kid who comes from the projects, and there are all kinds of social problems and only one parent is in the home, you can't say that those kids have equal opportunity just because they go to sit next to one another in the same high school class. That has to be addressed. So that's an example of structural injustice, where wealth tends to perpetuate wealth, and poverty tends to perpetuate poverty because of these. It becomes very, very difficult to move from one to the other. The United States, of all the Western democracies, is the country that has the least social mobility of all the European derived democracies. Right? We have the worst. We have the absolute worst in terms of the ability to move socially from one level to the other and economically. It's just not that good. Burgess talks about whites being passed over and oppression. That does happen in her perspective, and that women not getting the same treatment as men. Well, I think that's probably true. Intersectionality and how you might participate in one dominant group and yet be disadvantaged in another. Like, for instance, I look at the things that I can tick off, and I fit in most categories as being part of the dominant group, and then you get to the one on sexual orientation, and oops, I all of a sudden drop out. And in a key way, one that results in some real discrimination sometimes, which I've experienced. There are times I've had my job threatened when I was in school because people knew who I was, and the fact that I was open about it, and they didn't like that. That's just the way it was. And I even lost out on the possibility of becoming an assistant principal one year when my principal discovered who and what I was and told me flat out in my office that I would never be promoted because I was gay. Never. Not in his school, not in this district. I won't say what school, and I won't say what district. At least I was able to hold on to my job. He couldn't get rid of me that way. All right. Let me go to the next one here.